and thanks for checking out this quick video on how to make a tassel from Imagined Landscapes. I'm Sarah Shira, a knitting designer who likes to make patterns for everyday adventures. I've just designed this Norwegian style ski cap, lots of twisted stitch cables and a nice narrow tip. And what I want to hang a tassel off this end and give it a lovely bit of weight and a little extra design oomph. So today we're going to use 4 simple items to make a tassel. We've got a yarn needle, scissors, we're going to use a cell foam, and worsted weight yarn. Obviously you can vary the yarn, and you can also change the size of your tassel by changing how big the item you're wrapping around is. If you want something really specific, I suggest using some cardboard and cutting it to exactly the depth you want. Start by placing the yarn like this with the open end down, and then just start wrapping. Now, one of the things to note when you're wrapping yarn is that if you pull really tightly, the yarn gets skinny and stretches out. But what will happen when you're no longer putting tension on it is it'll pop back down to where it wants to be, just like all of us. If we're not being forced to do something, we go back to our natural state. So don't wrap it tightly, or when you take your tassel off, it's going to shrink up and not be the size you meant it to be at all. So wrap it, being careful not to get too tight. I like to hold my yarn kind of around like this. So I'm not actually really holding it, I'm just guiding it through a loop of my fingers and thumb, because then I'm not pulling on it at all. Okay, the other thing to keep in mind is that when you're making a tassel, you're only going to be seeing half of your yarn. The other half is obviously on the other side. So keep that in mind, that your tassel will end up being about twice as big as it looks to you as you're going. Okay, so I'm thinking that will be a little too slim. Let's keep going. And again, I'm winding this not by pulling on it, but by just passing it through my finger and thumb there. And just using that almost like a guide rather than yanking on it. Okay, let's say that's going to be enough. That's probably too much. I'm going to take a few off. Okay. Set it down. We're going to cut it at the bottom here where we had our other end. Snip that. Now we need about 10 inches, 12 inches, about 25 centimeters worth of yarn. Clip it, and we're going to put it underneath all of these wraps. Okay, then we will pull it to the top side. And we're going to tie a double knot. Once. Twice. Okay, now we have our tassel. We're going to slide it off the cell phone. And what we don't want to do is flop it around a lot. We like to keep everything kind of straight and going nice and parallel. Now you're going to cut another length of yarn, about a foot, 30 inches or 30 centimeters long. And this time you're going to tie again, but this time we're going to tie across. So I'm going to lift it up and put it underneath. And then I'm going to get ready to tie my knot. But before I tie my knot, I'm going to stop and I'm going to think, how big do I want the head of my tassel to be? Does that look good? Or would it look better a little higher? Depending on the look you're going for, tassels can have a different mood to them, sort of whether they're plump or slimmer. And where you tie this bit of yarn is going to make a big difference for how your tassel looks. So let's just have a look where I am now. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to snug it down just a bit. All right, and I'm going to tie a double knot again. And you may notice that one of my sides is longer than the other. That's on purpose. So I'm just going to ignore this shorter side for now, let it drop down. And I'm going to wrap around and kind of give my tassel a bit of a belt, a bit of a tidy up. Okay. We'll stop there. What I'm looking for is so that the end is long enough that I can trim it and it'll be the length of the other ones. So with that end that I left, I'm gonna tie another double knot. I'm going to let it drape down the way the others draped. And then I'm just going to take these little bits that I wrapped around and I'm actually going to use them to cover up the knot. Just so that it's not quite so obvious what's going on there. If you make your piece longer and you wrap it a few more times, you'll be able to cover up a bit more. But I think on a ski cap, I don't need to worry about too much about formality. I'm not making something for a fancy silk curtain or something. Now all we need to do is finish off the tassel by, oh, I just snugged that right off. I tugged it right off. All right, we need to cut these loops so that they are not loops anymore. So we're going to take our scissors and we're just going to cut along, pulling up so that we make sure that we're not accidentally cutting something a little wrong, so that things are even. And then we'll shake it a bit and see how things sort out. Now, as you can see, some of the sides look a little longer, so we're just going to trim it up a wee bit. A ski cap doesn't need a very formal haircut. Just needs to look kind of reasonably balanced and like nothing is particularly out of place. Oh, see that one right there is getting a little long and I keep missing it. All right, we've got these ends that we started with and I'm going to use those ends to sew through the cap and attach the tassel onto the hat and just give it a lovely, cheerful and fun little finish. Don't forget to check out imaginelandscapes.com for information about the patterns I design and for links to the audio podcast that I do with my sister all about knitting and geeky things like sci-fi and board games. Happy knitting! Dun, 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 dun.